Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. We're starting a little late, and I apologize for that. Once a year, we vote on our budget, and prior to that, we have a meeting with the governing bodies from the two townships. And so that's what happened before we came to this room tonight and why we're a little bit late. And as such, I need to call the meeting to order, and I need to read the statement. And it says, in accordance with the state sunshine law, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by sending a notice of the time, date, location, and to the extent known, the agenda for this meeting on January 10th, 2019, and on April 26th, 2019, to the Princeton Packet and the Times. Copies of the notice also have been placed in the board office and in each of the district schools on January 25th, 2019, and on April 26th, 2019, and sent to Plainsboro and West Windsor Public Libraries and Plainsboro and West Windsor Township Clerks on January 25th, 2019, and on April 26th, 2019. So we have our public hearing on the budget, but we're going to just take a little bit of a detour. We have a student representative from High School North who is not on the agenda, but in the hopes of letting her give her report and get back to whatever schoolwork she has, we're gonna turn it over to her for her quick report.
Good evening. My name is Sonia Manloy, and I'm a junior at West Windsor Plainsboro High School North. I hope you all enjoyed your spring break. Before we left for break, High School North Student Council hosted an event called Mr./Miss North. At this event, seniors were able to show off their talents and were able to raise $1,500 for the Children's Cardiomyopathy Foundation. The week before we left, the freshmen and the sophomores took the NJSLA exam. Coming back from break, the juniors and seniors are now getting ready for AP exams, which begin next week. This Friday, May 3rd, is Freshman Friday, which is a day where the freshmen will spread their school spirit. Additionally, the robotics team took 5th place in their division at the World Championships. For sports, both the boys and girls track team have been undefeated so far. A few of the runners went to Penn Relays and qualified for nationals. The boys tennis team is currently participating in the Mercer County Tennis Tournament, and all of the players qualified for semifinals, which take place tomorrow. To add, both the girls and boys golf team are undefeated so far. Overall, High School North has been very busy these past few weeks and cannot wait for the warm weather. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Russo and Dr. Adderhold to present our 2019-2020 budget.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Russo is going to take the bulk of the presentation, but I just wanted to start by thanking our Board of Education and members of the administration for all the work they do on the budget process. The budget process essentially begins for next school year, or the 2020-2021 year, as soon as this budget becomes approved. And that's thinking through all the different long-term considerations, whether it be working in consideration of benefits or negotiated contracts, like for instance in the 1920 school year, the Aramark contract, our building and grounds contract, will be up, and we'll have to go through a bidding process. We'll be negotiating with our Education Association colleagues, with our contract with our teachers. So we'll already be thinking and positioning our thoughts around the budgetary dollars there. No different from this year's budget build. We began thinking about that at the end of last April, beginning of May, a year ago, working with our committees, thinking about our strategic plan, thinking about our mission, vision, our values, and our goals. So as Dr. Russo is going to sort of take us through and talk about some of the highlights of this year's budget, I'll just mention a couple things up front, that we think of our budget every year as a planning tool, a consideration of contingencies, a management of risks, thinking about fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers in our communities, but also ensuring that we're funding and supporting our values, and that our budget serves as a reflection of our values as a district. At the same time, knowing that our budget must protect safeguards and buffers. As school districts aren't like homeowners, we don't have the ability to go out for an equity line of credit. We do not have credit cards. If we run into a budget shortfall or an unexpected budgetary circumstance throughout the year, it comes at the cost of something else if we budgeted too tight, that we end up having to potentially impact instructional program or extracurricular programming for students. Our goal is never to have an impact to program in an academic year. And what the district's been very fortunate to be able to do, but also very mindful of, is that we have been able to budget so that we have had surpluses, and those surpluses each year then go back to the taxpayers in the form of one of two things. It goes to tax relief for the subsequent year, or goes to capital reserve projects for our facilities. Those dollars don't get spent frivolously. We're very mindful to the taxpayers, and as I said, it ultimately goes back either through the facilities or goes back through the subsequent budget. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Chris Russo, to take us through this year's budget.
Okay, I was thinking earlier tonight at the other meeting we were in, it was dark. I wanted to come running in. Welcome. Jump around. Hello. Because the budget topic meeting is usually dull and boring and slow. So I hope not to make it too bad. I hope. No promise. All right, so the mission statement, we're building upon tradition of excellence. The mission of the West Windsor Plainsboro Regional School District is to empower all learners to thoughtfully contribute to a diverse and changing world with confidence, strength, character, and love of learning. Cool. What's a school budget? Planning tool, considers contingencies and manages risk. It's fiscally responsible. It's a reflection of our community values, and it must have safeguards involved. Big picture topics: special services, healthcare costs, staff and salary increases, capital projects, security, technology, $15 minimum wage. I'm not hitting on the other areas because you'll see that in the presentation. We'll touch on some of those. $15 minimum wage. If it had to impact our contracts as we have them now, it would be almost $600,000 increase to what we're spending now on our current subcontracted and in-district employees' hourly rates. It's graduated. Bottom line is, within, 4 years, we'll be at that, and or whatever the year is, and we'll $600,000. There will be an increase in our contracts, no doubt. Where I'm going to with that is the Sodexo contract for food service is out currently. Our Aramark contract for grounds goes out next year. So you can pretty much count on increases there. Transportation, you'll see that line has a large number because of current increases that we're facing right now. Okay, so one of the things here, we like to compare ourselves to Princeton, Montgomery, and Hopewell Valley, districts of similar quality and success. If you notice, this is high school, niche. Rankings in New Jersey, notice is high school. South is the highest in this category. North is second highest in this category of the districts we compare ourselves against. Math proficiency, we're second highest in this category for math proficiency. Reading proficiency, we're third, close third, I'll say. SATs, number one, ding, 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 ding. Student-teacher ratio, very competitive. Cost per student, again, lowest in the category. Average teacher salary, second lowest in the category. So these are numbers. Some of it's subjective, others is taken from state documentation and added into the niche information. So again, niche, but now it's school districts, K-12. So now we added Milburn in. So we have Princeton, Milburn, WWP, Montgomery, Hopewell Valley. So notice we're third overall. Woo-hoo. Academics, A+, culture and diversity, B, health and safety, A, resources and facilities, B+. We passed the referendum. Let's get to an A or A+. Sports. So overall, we rank very competitively in this group of similar districts. WWP student achievement. We've got merit scholar semifinalists, finalists, and scholars accommodation. Notice 29, 25, 139. You have AP scholars with honors, scholars with distinction, and national scholars. And notice those numbers. Again, see nothing like it. Again, more student achievement, 92% of high school students had a grade 3 or higher in advanced placement tests. 1,161 high school students took 2,724 AP tests. Notice our SAT scores. This is us, well above New Jersey. These are ACT scores. Again, us, well above New Jersey. So on the finance end, we're not going to be left behind either. We have egos too. So for the 10th year in a row, we've received ASBO International Award for Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. And for the 5th year in a row, we received the Meritorious Budget Award. This is an international organization. It's a very stringent, you end up making a submittal, it goes back and forth, it gets reviewed by multiple people actually all across the world review it, and then it comes back to you. So it's pretty cool. It's a lot of work, but again, it's something else. Township enrollment. So Plainsborough's enrollment actually went down a little bit this year. You notice 42% to 41, and notice West Windsor's went up, and that's a percentage of the region, they say, percent of the regional would be the translation. So that means West Windsor has a few more students and Plainsborough lost a few more students. I think it was 157, I believe the number is. Allocations of expenditures. So you have regular programs, that's your general fund, that's what your taxpayers' dollars pay for. You have a $2.5 million increase. $1 million of that is technology because it used to be in Fund 12, but it's for Chromebooks, and by definition that should be in Fund 11. So $1 million of that $2.5 million increase is actually Chromebooks that used to be in Fund 12. The rest, this includes salaries and the additional positions in the general fund regular education program. Special ed and tuition. Expenditures for in-district programs actually went up by more than $700,000. Tuition for out-of-district programs went down by a little over $1 million. So you have a net difference of a little over $300,000. But realize support for in-house programs actually went up by almost $750,000. And the reduction in tuition is why that number ends up negative. Athletics and activities, you see the difference there. Educational support, these are your guidance counselors, your nurses, your OTPT, basic skills, English language instruction, those kind of issues. You see it went up $772,000. Improvement of instruction pretty much held even. Admin and technology went up $411,000. This is all the administrators and the additional positions that we've put in the budget, as you've seen in prior presentations. Ops and maintenance, that's operations and maintenance, with a slight increase, 1.5% or $242,000. Transportation, I touched on this earlier. This past August, we had a bus company reach out to us, August 14th, I think it was, and said, you know what, we're going out of business. So we had 40-some routes that needed to be bid. We went out to quote for 90 days in August, because that's what you do, because you need to get the buses in. Then we went out to bid. The routes came in about $400,000 more than we were currently paying. So at the end of June 30, we've already been noticed. We're not at June 30 yet, but we've been notified that one of our vendors that has routes since 2001 is not going to do the route. Realizing the number one job in this country that's needed is a CDL driver. You need a CDL to drive a bus. So it's the highest demand job. The test changed for bus drivers. They need to know all the mechanics of the buses. If they have a 17-inch neck, they have to have a sleep apnea test. If they have a medication change, they have to be on the bus for 10 days. So the pool of drivers has shrunk tremendously. The rates are going up, the costs are going up. Fuel, when this route was bid, was about 90 cents a gallon. It's now $3.30 a gallon. So you see why a bus company would come to us and say, guess what, we're not renewing the routes. So we have 27 tiered routes, I believe, and 23 single tiered routes, again, 40 routes approximately, that I know that math equals that, but no, sorry, 50 routes. But it's give or take because of the way that the tiering works. So we had to go out to bid. So that's a long way of saying we have a $940,000 increase on that line, or 8.2%, because we We had a $400,000 increase this year, and we're expecting at least another 400, plus the increase on the routes that remain. Benefits, you see a modest increase of 4.5% or $1.4 million. Capital outlay, the difference here, this is a part of town center and part of Hall. So that's why it was $45 million, and now it's down to 20. This is other projects and the remainder of town center and Hall that get budgeted again. I'll go over what the other projects are. $1.836 million. I'll get to that in the next slide. Grants and entitlements, pretty much the same thing. Debt service, notice the difference. This difference is made up. We said there would be no tax increase due to the referendum. This money's coming out of capital reserve. Capital reserve and additional state aid of $220,000. So again, no tax impact here. That $1 million is made up by capital reserve balances. So because of the change in the capital reserve balance usage, that's why the budget went down by 6.1%. The general fund actually went up 3.65%. Okay, so these are the projects in the budget. Ball stopper on 571. Softball field, that's to try to keep the balls out of the road, foul balls. High School North parking lot, we're looking to put a fenced up area, secure positions for the buses overnight. High School North salt storage, right now all the salt is stored at High School South. All the trucks have to come from both communities in South and then go back to the schools to spread salt. We're looking to put one at North, and we're looking to put one at Village. High School North roof restoration, lock hardware replacement, roof coating at Grove Middle School. This was to be done in 2 more years. We want to do the final 2 years in 1 year because we're going to have expansion going on, and we want to get that out of the way so we're not held up for 2 or 3 years out. Again, salt storage at Village, Airedale repair, say that. At Dutch Neck, that's the air conditioning unit, ventilators. Dutch Net exterior doors, $93,000. That's the 1.836 that I mentioned. Buildings and grounds for normal summer projects, for concrete, asphalt, carpeting, painting, any sort of these issues. $1.35 million is in this budget for those projects. So carryover projects from 18-19. This is what's left on the Town Center and Hawk projects. Other outstanding balances from like turf balances haven't been liquidated, those kind of issues, plus the 1.83 was 3.1 million. I take back. 3.1 million is 1.3 plus 1.8. That's why you get the 3.1. So the total capital projects that are actually in the budget are 21,093. Allocations of revenue. Tax levy. We're looking for a 2.45% increase. This is 2% tax levy cap plus additional $728,000 for spending growth limitation adjustment for healthcare. That's a mechanism in there that covers for a healthcare increase. Notice I mentioned the increase of 1.4 million. We're asking for about half of that in an adjustment. So we're able to do that. We're actually leaving an additional 1.4 million of additional spending authority on the table. We're not asking for it. That we can move that forward. It becomes bank cap. So we're only asking for half of our additional spending authority. Miscellaneous income. We're budgeting additional banking interest. We called all our banks in over the course of the year. And said, quite frankly, the rates are too low. We went from a rate of pretty much like 0.35% in all of our banks to anywhere from 1.75 to 2% on our balances. So that's an additional $400,000+. So we budgeted it. State aid went up by $715,000 on the general fund. State Education Medicaid Initiative. They tell us how much we have to budget. We have to budget $70,000. That's for students receiving services that are eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. We have to supply all the services. We have to do all the accounting of all those records. For every dollar we generate, the state takes 70 cents. We get 30 cents on the dollar. So it's just the way of the state fleecing us. So that's where that number comes from. General fund balance. This is general fund balance. This is our own savings. We had $1 million less to use to appropriate. So this goes to offset taxes or deposit into capital reserve, both. Stick around. So capital reserve withdrawal for local share. Again, the 1.86 million. Remember last year, 21,535,470 was Town Center, Hawk, and the turf projects. This year it's 1.836 million. So that's the difference. Notice a 91% decrease. Capital reserve debt service. Again, this is where we're using our own balances to offset the increase in the debt service. We said we would do that during the referendum, and we're doing it. So this is the use of our fund balance. So see, it says balance is used. Grants and entitlements, pretty much level. Debt service, this shows up because this is actually what the debt service number is. It's just a mechanism in the software. It shows up this way. This difference is created by capital reserve, an additional $220,000 in state aid and $126,000 in fund balance in that line that are offsetting the additional capital reserve amount required. 6.2% decrease, but again, that's because of this number right here in the capital reserve withdrawal. So general fund budget goes up 3.65%. So review of budgets over the years. In 0809, tax relief, this is the budget balance designated to for subsequent years' expenditures, $5.3 million. The budget had a 4.3% increase, and that was your state aid number back then, and the budget went up by 3%. So notice the percent increases, notice the budget over budget increases, notice the state aid, how that's changed over the years, and how much fund balance has been used to offset appropriations. Basically what that means is you're using your savings to offset what you're spending money on. So notice 1920, we have $7.6 million total to use. The budget decreases by 6.1% because of the reduction in capital reserve, Town Center and Hawk. Notice the state aid is only at 9.9 million, but again, it's going back up, and the tax levy increase is 2.45%. Taxpayers Guide to Educational Spending. This is a document the state puts together based on audits. This is not us. So what I really want to point out here, look at 0203. Notice Hopewell Valley, Princeton, and Montgomery. We were all spending about the same amount, $10,000. Notice 1617, which is the last actual, meaning audited numbers that they're presenting in the Guide to Educational Spending. Hopewell up by 7,400, Princeton up by 7,000, us up by 2,700, and Montgomery up by $6,450. This is on an average cost per student. So this is the cost per student to educate a child. Budgetary. Final two slides so you can relax. It's almost done. Plainsboro. The budget would increase the tax rate to $1.50 per $100 of assessed property value for an increase of 2.9 cents. For the home assessed at the township average, this would be an increase of $114. For the owner of a home, a township average of $449,715. The estimated tax bill would be $6,777. It's estimated if we don't do the actual collecting taxes. And this is on your tax assessment, not the assessment of the value of your home. It's the tax assessment. West Windsor, this budget would increase the rate to $1.59.3 per $100 of assessment for an increase, tax value assessment, for an increase of 4.5 cents. For home assessed at the township average, the increase would be $237. For the owner of the average home of $521,873, the school tax would be $8,313 annually on the average assessment, tax assessment. And that's it. So, any questions?
Any questions? Yeah. Okay. Seeing as there's no questions from the board, it's now opportunity for public comments on the budget. So I'm going to ask members of the community who would wish to make a public comment just about the budget. This is their time. Each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes. Okay, doesn't look like there's any public comment, so we'll close that. And we're going to now move ahead and vote on the budget. So I need a motion to approve the 2019-2020 budget. Louisa and Tony. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I want to comment that I'm very impressed that Dr. Russo has found so many ways to save money, including getting more interest from the banks and with health insurance, et cetera. So I appreciate that. But I do think taxes are too high, and so therefore I can't vote for the budget. But thank you for all your hard work.
We have to miss it. Tony?
I'm just curious. I acknowledge too that taxes can be high, but the board's had this discussion, and Carol, you didn't raise any objection in the past. We've had retreats. At our last retreat, we gave the administration guidelines to follow, and they've kept to them. They followed we've had these discussions, and if the tax increase was a deal breaker for you, you could have said something sooner.
That's true, Tony, but recently I've been talking to some people, town officials, about the development and how it's going to proceed. And I think that we may not have as many new residents as quickly as we think, and so therefore it might not be necessary to hire so many staff so early in the process.
They had just told us at our last, when we asked them, that it's proceeding the way everybody had planned. And
That's not. Hammett Marath said that next week he will have a meeting where they will find out if their plan was approved.
Well, but isn't it true, though, that the budget is, the increases in staff are being proposed to address the issues that we currently have? We're not adding in staff for students that aren't here. The additions to staff are to deal with and address the current situation. Am I correct, Dr. Russo? Or Dr. Adderhold?
Correct. So the staff that's in the budget and was in prior presentations, for instance, 2 elementary teachers at Village Elementary School, currently class sizes at 28 in 4th grade. To bring the class sizes down, we added 2 5th grade teachers next year, trying to get the class average to under 24. At least from a starting point, what we've seen historically the last several years, we gain over 40 plus students at our upper elementary schools every summer. So starting at 28 was a bad position point for classes, for student experience, for teachers, you name it. So we added into the challenge we're having is we're out of rooms. So we are literally moving office space and moving music classrooms onto carts so we can make room, because we're not going to have the ability to move the pre-K over to Hawk, because the Hawk edition won't be ready in time for the new year. Other examples would be like 2 growth guidance counselors at the high schools. So yes, I mean, theoretically, we could say that those will have due to future growth, but I also would argue that it's to maintain averages, appropriate average, and provide more direct services to students today, to provide more counseling support to students today, and not just about future growth. I expect to add more counselors in the future. 4 instructional assistants in 1st grade being added for the DLI program. Yes, there is a growth assistant, athletic director / supervisor for health and health and PE. Position that's not there. And there's also a assistant principal at Wyckoff, a building that has one administrator with cresting 500 students and 40-plus staff. So there is some growth positions in. I'd argue that those are not about a future enrollment. They're about issues that need to be mitigated today. A growth nurse at Millstone River, so that 1,100 students have 2 nurses, not 1. A growth nurse at the middle school level, so that the 2 middle schools have 2 nurses each for 1,200 students, plus the staff needs at each building instead of 1.5, which was 1 2 years ago. So these positions are positions that are necessary and needed. We talk about budgeting our values. I believe that the budget we've brought forward and the staffing we've brought forward is respectful and appropriate, and it's staffing that is necessary today. And quite frankly, when the growth does come, and I have every expectation that the 3,600 growth residential units across the 2 communities will come, we can debate whether it's going to be at 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years, but I promise you that at the strength of this community, both the families in the community, as well as the township structures, as well as the resources and availability, as well as the strength of this school district, the families will come. We can look just no further than our neighboring districts and their rankings on the most recent report as of today, and I promise you, you'll get families that move into our community from neighboring communities the minute housing stock opens. And there's not an empty housing market. So what we know is when housing goes out, they fill. So the plan that Mr. Mayor Marate was referring to was, as a component of the court order, there's a requirement to come back to the courts to show that you are in 100% compliance with respect to the affordable housing decision. So the decision, the May meeting that he was referring to in our prior meeting, I know the public wasn't party to that, but what the mayor was saying is that by early May, we'll know from the judge if they accept the plan. And to be accepting the plan, you have to be in compliance with the ordinances and variances of the larger community. You have to show that the places where you say that you're going to put housing, it's been zoned or approved by ordinance to have that housing stock. So to show that the unit you said would be there will be there. There's a whole other piece about the speed in which the developers will come in, but you have to show that the plan is compliant. What the township is going to be able to prove is that their plan is compliant to the court decision. The judge will have to ultimately decide whether it's compliant to their liking, or will they want additional things, or will they say there's something that's in violation. Something that could be in violation is if a unit was supposed to have sewer and it's going to have septic. Right, that might be a violation of the municipal ordinance. I can tell you in conversations that I've personally had with the township officials, not necessarily the elected officials, but the actual folks that are making sure that they're in code compliance for the court order, that their plan that they'll bring forward to the judge is expected to be accepted because they have made sure that they are in compliance with the requirements by the court order, or the court decision, settlement agreement. So what he was referring to, the minute they have the blessing of the judge, then developers can start coming in. And we would expect the Thompson property, the 181 townhomes next to the new mosque out on Old Trenton Road, will be a property that will come in very early, that will send to Dutch Neck Elementary School. We know that the Woodstone property, 443 units, is underground right now. We know that the Toll Brothers properties of both the 40-plus apartments, the 51 townhomes, plus the 72 Project Freedom units is currently underground right now and developing, and some will open next year. So if we just take the full 43, the 181, and the 160 units through Toll Brothers, we have over almost 700 units that is coming out of the 3,600 approximate units, not to mention the 100-day road units. Actually, it's technically 71 in phase 1 that is being built right now, with anticipation to be starting to open throughout next school year. So they're coming. The speed of which they rent, the speed in which the market share can take, is a question that politicians will debate to show that the impact's not as great as that might be said. It also could be such that they also have not been taking any proactive steps to increase fire service, police service, any kind of public works, any kind of that. So it's easier to say that the school is overbuilding too fast. But what I would argue is that we have a fundamental responsibility at this table to ensure that we can maintain and not only maintain, but ensure an excellent education for the residents and the students of this school district. You cannot maintain excellence through overcrowding. There will be impacts. We're feeling impacts bubbling through the system. We have no rooms at Village. We have no rooms at Community. We're over 95% capacity at any given period of any given day throughout our buildings. We need the space. The space is well justified. I'm not going to go and fight the referendum. We won the referendum 60-40. Right? The reality is we're building. The question is how fast do you fill it? The board will have to ultimately make the determination whether or not they sit with empty classrooms with overcrowded classrooms at the same time. That's a board decision for the future. The staffing that's brought forward in today's budget is about needs of today.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Chang.
Yes.
Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hertz.
No.
Ms. Ho.
Yes.
Ms. Krug.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Mr. Zhang.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Keish.
Yes. Well, that closes our public hearing on the budget. And I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Adderholt for some more comments.
So I wanted to recognize two individuals in the room. Standing at the camera, pointing right at me right now, is our new district videographer, Ty Jenkins. Ty, welcome. Ty joins us from the Air National Guard, where he served our state the past nine years. He brings with him a background in web design, photography, and videography. And we're thrilled to have him join. He just joined us yesterday, so day 2, and he's already out at a night meeting. So Ty, welcome. Right. Yeah. You can do a selfie for the camera if you want. But I'm also sitting right behind Ty. I want to just recognize Louis Nazaro. Louis has stepped in, as many in this room know, that we had a tragic loss of a colleague in Jamie Watson's passing. Louis stepped in and helped us out immediately with videography needs. He works within the district, within the technology team, and has a passion and background in videography and jumped right in to support us. Not just us, but this position is a shared position and a shared service agreement with both townships and the school district. Each pays a third. And so you might see Ty out at either Plainsboro, on the side of the road, doing a video on sidewalk projects, because they like to do things on road projects, or you might see Ty at a township council meeting in West Windsor. But Louis and the tech team and Rick Cave and Harry Doctor and all others really jumped in and gave tremendous support. So Louis, I want to say thank you to you for all your help during these past couple months. Also, fresh off the print, U.S. News, Best High Schools, New Jersey just came out today. And I think it's fair that just to recognize just continued success as a school district. I would caution that rankings are somewhat arbitrary in the sense that each ranking picks different measures. For instance, when the state recently released their newest report card, they talked about cohort survival or cohort scores for graduation. So if you look at like High School North would be hurt by a 4-year average. And I say that because we do have students at High School North and some of our special needs programs, in particular our LARCS programs, that are 7-year students. And we accept that. We believe we have a responsibility as a school district to provide the best educational program for our students. And we accept that in that particular report, we're never going to rank the way that others might because of our cohort score, or because of our park opt-outs, or because of the high level of AP testing. If you're an AP student, you don't take the NJSLA, otherwise known AKA PARC. It's essentially the same test, just renamed. You just don't take it because your AP is exempt from it. So your strongest test takers do not show up in those scores. And that just is what it is. In this particular ranking, when you look at comprehensive public high schools, comprehensive being all students in the community become accepted to the school district, not magnets, charters, or public academies, those are in this ranking as well. We rank south than north, number 16 and 17. But when you extract out the admissions-based exclusionary high schools that are the magnets, the academies, the charters, and you look solely at the comprehensives, we're numbers 3 and 4. And that's quite remarkable for sustained academic achievement over time. north and south on any particular ranking you pick it, always show up in a top 25, top 100, top 10. To give some examples, Hopewell, who we align ourselves to, is 63. Robbinsville, which we think highly of, is 111. Steinert, where my kids go, are 286, right? And I would argue that in all of these school systems, in certain educational programs, you're going to get an excellent education, right? Our students overwhelmingly excel. That's a credit to our teachers, to our administrators, to our community, to our parents, to the support towards education from this Board of Education. And so I just think we need to consistently recognize that there is persistent excellence that occurs within our school community, and we should be proud of it. Not only should we be proud of it, but we should be mindful that on the aggregate, we're looking at 3,000 high school students achieving high levels of success consistently, and that's really remarkable. When you look at our SAT averages being number 2 and 6 in the state, I think North is I actually have it somewhere. North is 1327 average. You know, Montgomery is the lead in 1331. Credit to Montgomery, our neighbors to the northwest. Milburn, then Tenafly, then Princeton, then South at 1309. And again, you look across averages of an entire class of kids. That's just remarkable achievement. So, you know, again, a credit to them. But we should also recognize that we just had our entire music program at High School North over in Portugal selling out theaters in churches as they're performing to crowds of 1,200 with our band, our orchestra, and our choir. And our sports teams are excelling, and our kids in the arts are excelling. And so we really work hard to make sure that every kid's known and every kid has a place and a home within our programs. So again, credit to our staff and to our students. Right.
And to our superintendent. I'm going to turn it back to you, Dr. Adderhold, right?
Yeah, I got
For a presentation.
All right, so OFAC. What is OFAC? It's the Office of Fiscal Accountability and Compliance. So why am I doing a presentation on OFAC? Because I'm required to by a finding. In 2011, before a majority of folks at this table were at this table, or sitting in the seats that they're sitting in, we were trying to do a roof project at Wyckoff Elementary School. And when we did that roof project, we did a bid, advertisement for a bid that was placed in April 19th, 2011. Okay, so where this comes from is that there's something called ROD grants, regular operating district grants, and when you submit for reimbursement, what often happens years after completion of a project, for the reimbursement for the state share of those projects, there's a checklist that they go through. And if any part of the checklist gets flagged, it gets sent to OFAC, the Office of Fiscal Accountability and Compliance, to do a review on what was flagged. In this case, a bid advertisement was done appropriately. At some point during that advertisement, there was a decision to do an amendment to the posting. And when you do an amendment to the posting, that has to be up for 10 days. 10 days. The day you post does not count. In the counting, the day that the advertisement was posted was counted. So 8 years later, we have to talk to you about a one-day mistake of a posting that had no net impact on any individual receiving such award and made no difference on the success of the project being completed, but it requires us to do what's called a corrective action plan. So the district was not in compliance with the seven-day rule for the addendum. An addendum requires 7 days in addition to the 10-day. So because the day of was counted. So we should have been one more day. Because of that, we will be bringing forward a corrective action plan on May 14th for the board's approval. The corrective action plan will state that the district will comply with the 7-day notice requirement, providing notice of all future bids and addendums no later than 7 days prior to the date for acceptance of bids. So, this is a one-day mistake 8 years ago, but it does require that we come forward, admit our mistakes, pledge that we'll never do it again, and bring forward a corrective action plan to swear before the community and the state that we'll be in compliance in all future bidding. So as we were in compliance with the purchasing laws for the other contracts related to the 2010 SDA grants, it doesn't appear to be a systemic problem for the district. It just seems to be a one-time oversight from everything we can tell, and that we'll just work to ensure that more diligence is paid in the future with all the different bid plans and bid structures we'll be going forward with through the referendum process to ensure that we're complying with the appropriate rules that govern the bid process. For the good of the board, is there any particular questions on this matter? Hearing that, just a reminder that on May 14th, there'll be a board item to accept the corrective action plan. Again, the corrective action plan in this case is very straightforward and saying that we'll be in adherence to the bid timelines. If it was any more complicated than that, we would wait to the 28th for the Finance Committee, but we would have to ask for an addendum to the timelines. Once the corrective action plan is approved, we will then take the finding and the corrective action plan and place both on the district website as required under the guidelines from OFAC. Again, OFAC is the Office of Fiscal Accountability and Compliance. All right. Thank you, everyone.
That brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. The board invites thoughts and reactions on agenda items and items of concern from members of our community who are present. Each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer, and this public comment period shall be limited to 60 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Samastrelli, and I'm the president of the Teachers Association here in the district. Excuse me, I need to make this bigger as I forgot my reading glasses in the car. I want to thank the board for the budget vote this evening. I think wish we could always use more staffing, but I do want to make a comment that some of the staffing that have been added this year to the budget are important. The nurses are needed in each of the schools for the middle school and for the high school, and also here at the village. The counselor addition to the personnel next year is also important because counselors at the high school do a lot. And I have to say, with what the counselors have been through this year, with some of the things they have had to deal with in helping the students to overcome some of their feelings, there has been a toll on the counselors themselves. There's been an exhaustion with them, and everybody from administration to myself have been telling them, you need to take care of yourself so you can take care of the students. And the lowering of the class sizes are very important because we do not know who comes in over the summer. So I want to give my appreciation to the board for adding to some of those positions. And also want to comment on Dr. Adol's comment, sorry. Your comment on rankings is true. Just as we say no student is a test score, no district is a ranking. However, because I think in our family here we look at our goal of a student-centered education, we have shown not just, as Dr. Russo, you pointed out some of the academic achievements, but I think some of the achievements that teachers are most proud of is the students who grow and develop over the year, and that's something that I think we've been able to develop. I've only been here 32 years, but I know our association is celebrating 50 years next year, and we've been doing a lot for 50 years, and we'll be at the Centennial for Founders Day, and one of the messages we want to share with the community with the little card magnets are great students, great teachers, and great schools, and I think that's what we have achieved here as a family over the last many years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joy Horton, 10 Hopkins Court in Plainsboro. I recently heard from a parent in the Trenton School District that the new high school that they're building there, they're only allowing the children that have achieved a certain grade point average to go to the new high school. And it really broke my heart. One of the things I wanted to say here is let's make sure that we're not just, we focus a lot on the children that are achieving here. There are some children that are not achieving. Let's make sure that we're that district, that we're also going to make sure that the children that are not achieving, we're doing everything in our power to make sure that they're achieving as well. And we don't put restrictions or we don't put things on we don't put placements or things like that saying that, hey, you can't go to the new class or the new this if you don't have a certain grade point average. So I just want to make sure that we're not that district that does anything like that. And let's make sure that we do everything in our power to make sure that those children that are still falling behind, like I said, we put so much emphasis on the kids that have high SAT scores, and we're always talking about the high achieving. Let's make sure that we still do not forget about the children that are not achieving in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Tiffany Cummings, 15 Hampshire Drive, Plainsboro. So I'm only here because my son is a Boy Scout and he has an assignment to do. That's why I'm here. But one line item on the budget did sort of strike my attention because my oldest son, who recently graduated from high school south, has always been in special ed. So I'm just curious what the justification was to decrease the funds or the expenses into that program. I know it's external from what you had mentioned. You will increase the internal, but any external services have been decreased. So I'm just curious, what justification?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much based on out-of-district tuitions, is why there was an overall decrease. The students we're actually bringing the students back into district because we believe we can service them better and provide services better than some of the out-of-district placements. So that's the reduction in the tuition is we're bringing them back in because we feel we can offer a better program than they're getting out of district.
Is that consistent with the other neighboring competing schools, or?
Yeah, pretty much. What's going on, there's a sort of a paradigm shift with special education. Concept is you can take care of your own better. You can provide services. You can oversee those services. There's also a concept going on out there that some of the private schools aren't providing the program that they used to at one time. And that our professionals aren't appreciating that, and parents may be seeing that as well and don't appreciate that, and are giving us a chance to, to keep the student here and work with them.
I just would also, just one point, Dr. Russo, also it's required under federal law that to the maximum extent possible, a child that may be special needs is to be educated in the least restrictive environment, and that always starts within the home school district. So public schools across the state of New Jersey have been greatly expanding their programs and offerings for special education students. And to Dr. Russo's point, it has resulted in kind of a statewide decrease in placements or dedication of budgetary monies towards those private placements. So it's not a reduction in special ed programming, it's a reduction in money that we may have been paying to outside facilities,
Right.
because we are now offering those programs in-house.
Okay, all right. I only asked because I know some of the parents that I've been very active in the Special Ed Parent Association. I know a lot of parents have vocalized that they couldn't get the services here and they can only get services external. So it's sort of like a red flag. Why are we moving funds out when there is a need to satisfy some needs? Thanks for your.
Just one comment and one point of order. Just for those that are in the room and have been in the room, historically we close public comment and then give response. Public comment is very much a public comment. It's not supposed to be a Q&A going back and forth. We're always welcome to talk offline. That was just, but I do appreciate that the answer was provided. So just something for us to be mindful of from the rules of the rules of the meeting. With respect to the formulary component, the other thing to be mindful of is that tuition has to be assigned to a student and has to be specifically identified to the student when it gets reviewed, to a student code, to when it gets reviewed by the county, executive county superintendent and the executive county business administrator. You can't just keep tuition dollars in because you want to. You have to align the tuition dollars to a student, to a program. So when there's less students out of district and those numbers have decreased because there's more students in district, the tuition line has to come down, or you're going to get flagged in an audit or well, not even in your audit. That's why when we submit to the preliminary review of the budget to the county superintendent, they are looking to make sure that we're not hiding money in pockets, that we're not hiding like fictitious students, so to build the budget. So we have to make sure that they're aligned. But to Dr. Russo's earlier point, we have continuously added additional staff and for additional programming. And if you looked back at last year at High School North, we built in the student store for the multiple disabled program. We built in an additional van a year ago for transportation for work study programming, primarily at High School North. We built in OT, PT support. We built in additional BCBA support. We built in additional teaching support. Same thing with this year. There's an additional BCBA to provide supports for students. There's an additional reading specialist built into the budget. There's 4 additional special education staff members, including OT, PT, resource, in-class resource. Right. So there are staff being built in to be mindful of both student needs for regular education programs with like reading intervention support at the middle level. There already is reading intervention support at the elementary, as well as a regular education behaviorist, so that we can try to mitigate supports and provide supports to students pre-classification or pre-moving to classification. There's also at the high school level dollars built in for a program called AVID, Advancement via Individual Determination, which will be explored next year with teams of teachers, with the building administration, and then bring forward to a implementation for the subsequent year. So we're working to try to find ways to address students' needs so that we're providing targeted supports to students that have been traditionally academically tracked in maybe a college prep program, but have potential for advanced classwork with tutoring support, with mentoring and other things. So those programs are being supported within this budget as well.
Thank you. We have another public comment.
Hi, good evening. Joanne Lasky, Hunt Court, West Windsor. I have spoken to this board on a number of occasions about budgets, often asking for more, often in the form of additional resources for students when I've represented different building PTAs or PTSAs. So I just want to say that, and I don't normally comment once a budget's been presented, but there's been some questions. And I think that as a person who observes a lot of these proceedings, it can be confusing just for, because you guys are in it, but I think it's important to acknowledge that it can be confusing for community members to kind of identify all the different line items. But I just felt it important to share that I appreciate any time a budget is cognizant of student needs. And years ago, I came and I asked you all to visit Millstone because our classes were hitting 26, 27 and in the 4th grade. And we so appreciated the addition of extra classrooms in 5th grade. So I'm glad that Village will be having that same opportunity because at that level, they're still little kids. So I just felt important to share the appreciation because whenever I represent a building, PTA or PTSA, what I hear from parents regularly is we want more. And of course, we're all taxpayers, but parents are always asking for more for their kids. So it's a tremendously difficult thing. How do you balance being fiscally responsible with giving the families more? So I just think it's important for you as a board to hear, at least from my perspective, that when I'm hearing what parents are saying, they're asking for more, and it does sound like we're getting more, and I'm sure people are still going to ask for more. And that will continue to be the thing because that's what we have going on in West Windsor Plainsboro. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing that nobody's getting up, we'll close that first opportunity for public comment, and we will now move on to our committee reports. We'll begin with Administration and Facilities.
Thank you. The Administration and Facilities Committee met on April 16th. We reviewed 4 policies and 2 regulations. Of the policies that we're going to recommend for a first reading at our next meeting are administrating a policy and regulation for administering an opioid antidote, policy and regulation for school district security, and a policy for benefits covering non-affiliated Category E employees, which is our community education staff. We also looked at a policy 5756 for transgender students, and the committee wants to do more work on it before we bring it forward for a reading. So we'll be discussing that at our next meeting. Then we had a discussion on a Eagle Scout project. One of the township's Eagle Scouts is proposing to build a pergola at Wyckoff, and the committee's on board with that idea. The scout will have to go work with Buildings and Grounds and obtain the necessary permits from the townships to go ahead and do the construction. We also next reviewed a job description for a new Assistant Athletic Director / Supervisor, Health, Physical Education, and Driver Education. Put that on a business card. The new position will provide support to the athletic director and supervise health, physical education, and driver education. The committee recommends that the job description be approved, and it's on our agenda for tonight. Then we had updates on safety and security. The wiring construction for new cameras, strobes, message boards, and phones is completed at all 10 buildings, and devices have been installed. Currently, the vendors are migrating door access control at the last school, High School South. The district school safety specialist will work closely with the technology department to create and schedule after-school tests for the new safety features. And the testing may include EDP staff and students, so parents will be notified in advance. We've also added a new Class 3 officer in April at Millstone River. Currently, 7 of the 10 schools have assigned Class 3 officers, and the screening and interviewing continues in both Plainsboro and West Windsor to select day shift officers for the remaining schools, which are Town Center, Wyckoff, and Village. So
The comment I made was Town Center was just hired, so the 10th officer was just hired.
okay. Okay, next is we had an update on the referendum projects. The design work for the fire alarm systems is complete for all 10 buildings. Phase 1 includes Maurice Hawk, Town Center, Village, and High School South. Community, Dutch Neck, Hawk, and Millstone will also get new fire alarm systems. And both High School North and Grover have their systems currently are up to date. Design work for the generators is complete and will be ready for bid in May. The generators will support critical loads, including life safety features in each building. Outside work on the generators will be done during the summer. The committee was also informed that the roofs at Town Center and Maurice Hawk are up, and I think all the buildings, those 2 buildings are all closed in now with that construction. The interior walls have been constructed, and crews continue to work on the plumbing, heating, and air conditioning ductwork. We discussed the equity update. The equity planning team met with Dr. Eddie Fergus, who's a professor at Temple, to discuss the next steps in implementing equity district-wide. The team determined that in May and June of this year, there will be an introductory equity presentation activity for all staff at May and June meetings. The district will also host an ed camp for equity and exclusivity on June 8th. Inclusivity. Say Airedale. That's internal.
Ed camps are open for educators and service providers. We'll be partnering with New Jersey Department of Health, Garden State Equality, High Tops, and the Trans Youth Forum.
And finally, the committee reviewed a draft copy of the comprehensive equity plan of the previous 3-year, of the last 3-year plan. The comprehensive equity plan outlines responsibilities for achieving and maintaining compliance with all state and federal laws governing equity in education. The committee reviewed the steps in the process for approving the new plan by June 14th. The final copy will be submitted for review at the next Administration and Facilities Committee meeting, which is on May 21st. Any questions?
Okay, time for curriculum. The curriculum committee met on Tuesday, April 16th. We reviewed the data on the reading recovery program. The data shows that the district's success rate is 80%, which is 10% better than the national average. The committee also reviewed reading levels from this past September that showed that the great majority of students in 2nd and 3rd grade who were in the reading recovery program, which is a 1st grade program, continued to show growth in reading and allowing them to successfully access the regular classroom reading curriculum. As we approach AP testing season, the committee reviewed the number of AP courses taken by the time a student graduates WWP. Reviewing the past 6 years of data shows that students are taking an increasing number of AP courses. In 2014, 173 students took more than 5 AP courses. This year, we have 263 students who have taken more than 5 AP courses. We discussed the research from College Board that shows that above 5 AP courses has limited benefits in regard to college completion rates. We also reviewed the recently released Turning the Tide 2 report that recommends limiting the number of advanced courses a student can take. Next, we reviewed the superintendent's recommendation to allow Deborah Cohen, a teacher at Grover, to conduct a research project entitled Developing Students' Skills for the 21st Century, the National History Day Model as Academic Enrichment, to investigate students' participation in the National History Day program. The committee recommends the approval of the job description for the position of Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. And the committee also recommends adoption of 3 textbooks for the Biology RC program, a book called Biology Foundation Series, for the Algebra 1 H&A program, Big Ideas Algebra 1, and for AP Statistics, the Practice of Statistics. Committee also recommends approval for 1 student to enroll in an online linear algebra course at the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth for the 2019-20 school year at a cost not to exceed $1,625 plus a textbook fee. And the committee recommends the approval of several consultants to provide services in relation to and funded by the 2019-20 Star Talk Hindi Urdu Summer Program. And we also looked at the approval for the Genesis Education Services to provide system maintenance, including lesson planner for the Genesis Student Information System and all the ancillary other programs that it supports, and secure backup services for the 2019-2020 school year at a cost of $52,877. And we also recommended the acceptance of 2 donations for the Midnight Mayhem Robotics event at High School North on June 22nd. The first is from the Bank of Princeton in the amount of $10,000, and the second from PNC Bank in the amount of $1,500. Committee recommends approval of the purchase of the PSAT testing materials from the College Board for the 1920 school year, the total cost of materials for both high schools is approximately $23,000. As part of the ongoing Media Center collection management, the committee recommends approval of the disposal of obsolete items in accordance with Regulation 7300.1 as follows: 499 books from the Maurice Hawk Library and 296 books from the High School South Media Center. All of these items meet one or more of the criteria that they are so worn and or damaged as to preclude effective use and economical repair or restoration, and or they are so outdated that they are no longer serve as worthy instructional tools. 4 teachers, 1 French teacher for AP French Language and Culture, 1 Spanish teacher for AP Spanish Literature and Culture, 1 German teacher for AP German Language and Culture, and 1 science teacher for AP Biology will attend AP Summer Institutes for Professional Development this summer, and the Curriculum Committee recommends approval of these professional development opportunities. Lastly, the Curriculum Committee recommends approval of the Science Olympiad group to go to Cornell May 30th to June 2nd of this year. The cost is approximately $1,000 per student. The committee will next meet on May 20th.
Does the board have any questions on curriculum? I'll turn it over to Finance.
Okay, the Finance Committee met on April 16th. The committee discussed the finance agenda items for today's meeting and supports the items. Staff updated the committee on the status of the 2019-20 budget, and the public hearing will be April 30th. The process is on schedule. The district is in the process of procuring prescription insurance. Staff reported that they will interview 2 finalists, both of whom have offered very competitive rates. Our healthcare insurance renewal will occur midway through the 2019 budget year, so we don't know what the rates will be for the second half of the year. Staff provided an update of the referendum projects. Hawk and Town Center are moving along nicely now. The district is pursuing an ESIP, which stands for Energy Savings Improvement Plan, which will enable us to fund capital improvements using savings from implementing energy efficiency projects. Work will begin on the investment grade audit soon. The district released the request for the food service contract procurement on April 15th. The committee also reviewed a report regarding our food services program. The report showed that the food services program is operating well this year from a financial perspective. The measures that were implemented in the fall to tighten up operations and purchasing have been effective. The district will be submitting a safety grant to the New Jersey Schools Insurance Group for funding. The district is entitled to almost $19,000. Staff are looking at projects that we would want to fund. The Office of Fiscal Accountability and Compliance contacted the administration regarding the procurement issue. We've already discussed that, so I won't go into any more detail on that. Other business, Dr. Aderhold shared information regarding the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Search. The committee also discussed the rates for the extended day program for 2019-20. In prior years, the district had rates for up to 6 p.m. and higher rates for up to 6:30 p.m. The process of enforcing the 6 p.m. deadline for those that chose that option and managing late penalties has been problematic. The new plan eliminates the 6 p.m. option, which will make it less stressful for parents and easier for staff to manage and reduce conflicts with our customers. The committee is next scheduled to meet Tuesday, May 21st.
Thank you. Are there any questions about finance? Seeing as there are none, we're going to move on to the voting portion of our agenda. We're going to start with administration items, and I'm going to take our yellow addendum first, separately. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Aderhold for a comment.
Good evening again, everyone. As everyone knows, we have the retirement of our colleague Martin Smith as the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. We went through a comprehensive process of posting the position. We had over 75 candidates, interview process, comprehensive process. I thank the community members, staff, administrators that participated in second round process. This evening, I'm pleased to bring forward the recommendation of Dr. Pamela Nathan as the next Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. Pam currently serves as the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction in the Freehold Township School District, and she's also the former District Supervisor of Special Education in Freehold Township School District. Prior to that, Pam was a middle school assistant principal and special needs administrator, an elementary assistant principal, and a 7th and 8th grade science teacher in North Carolina and Dumont Public Schools in New Jersey. Dr. Nathan teaches in the doctoral program at Monmouth University and in the master's program at Georgian Court University. Pam's a systems thinker, an instructional leader, and is passionate about creating learning experience focused upon the growth of every student. I'm pleased and excited to welcome Pam to our WWP team and present her her candidacy to the Board of Education this evening.
Thank you. So with that, I'd like a motion, please, on the yellow addendum, which is recommending the position of Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction to Dr. Pamela Nathan. Dana and Carol. Are there any questions?
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hertz. Ms. Ho.
Yes.
Ms. Krug.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Mr. Zhang.
Yes.
Mr. Cheng. Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes. Congratulations, Dr. Nathan. Next, I'm going to need a motion on administration items 1 through 11 plus the blue addendum. Tony and Morton? Are there any questions?
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Hertz.
Yes.
Ms. Ho.
Yes.
Ms. Krug.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Mr. Zhang.
Yes.
Mr. Cheng. Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes. Next, we have curriculum items 1. I need a motion on items 1 through 11. Dana and Carol. Are there any questions on the curriculum items?
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Ho.
Yes.
Ms. Krug.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Mr. Zhang.
Yes.
Mr. Cheng.
Yes.
Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hertz. Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us to our finance items, and we have a couple of things to just talk about. First, I'd like to ask you to put a big X through number 5. That item is going to be pulled off of the agenda for tonight. The other thing is in number 14 in our agenda, there's a number of things that we're going to be voting on related to travel and attendance at different places. And so we have a couple of board members who are going to be attending those things, and the board members who are attending can't vote for themselves to attend, so we're going to call those things separately, and the board members know where to abstain. So that's my long way of saying that I need a motion on finance items 1 to 4, 6 to 13, and 14D to K. Louisa and Taylor. Are there any questions about that? Go ahead.
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Krug.
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Mr. Zhang.
Yes.
Mr. Cheng. Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hertz.
Yes.
Ms. Ho.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana.
Yes.
Ms. Case.
Yes. Now I need a motion on finance item 14A. Tony and Morton. Are there any questions about that?
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Whitfield.
Yes.
Mr. Zhang.
Yes.
Mr. Cheng.
Yes.
Mr. Flores.
Yes.
Ms. Hertz. Ms. Ho.
Abstain.
Ms. Krug.
Yes.
Ms. Juliana?
Yes.
Ms. Case?
Abstain.
Okay.
And last, I need a motion on finance items number 14, B, and C. And that'll be Isaac and Taylor. Any questions?
Mr. Zhang?
Yes.
Mr. Cheng?
Yes.
Mr. Flares?
Yes.
Ms. Hertz? Ms. Ho?
Yes.
Ms. Krug? Mr. Whitfield?
Yes.
Ms. Juliana?
Yes.
Ms. Case?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is our personnel. We have items 1 to 3 plus the green addendum. Can we get a motion on that? Rachel and Martin? Are there any questions on the personnel items?
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Cheng.
Yes.
Mr. Flares?
Yes.
Ms. Hertz? Ms. Ho?
Yes.
Ms. Krug?
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield?
Yes.
Mr. Zhang?
Yes.
Ms. Juliana?
Yes.
Ms. Case?
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Tony and Isaac. All those in favor? Say aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Did, Louisa abstaining?
All right. Thank you. 1 minute.
Ms. Ho, which one, from March 19 or April 2nd? March 19, okay.
Are there any liaison reports? Do we have any new business? This brings us to our second opportunity for public comment. 15 minutes will be provided at the end of our meeting for public comment. I'll remind you that each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes. All statements will be directed to the presiding officer, and this public comment period shall be limited to 15 minutes.
My name is Bruce Thomas Charlie, President of the Teachers Association. Quick comment, kudos on the great Robert's Rules of Orders. Michelle, very good job. But actually, I wanted to get up here, I wanted to welcome Dr. Nathan. Congratulations, welcome to your family. We look forward to a long, productive career in this family lesson. Just the best of luck to you.
Is there anyone else? Well, thank you. Before we move forward, I just wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge some of the retirements that we just voted on in this agenda. Penny Bowen, from a science teacher at Community Middle School, is retiring after 30 years in the district. Jean Davis, an elementary school teacher at Millstone River, has worked here for 22 years. Catherine O'Donnell, a health teacher at Grover, is retiring after 25 years with us. Andrea Scaturo, a high school South language arts teacher, is retiring after 18 years in the district. And Denise Shea, math teacher at High School North, is retiring after 33 years in the district. And I want to thank them all for their dedication to our kids and wish them well in their retirement. So typically, our board meets for closed session before this meeting, but today that didn't happen, and so we're going to have to go into closed session now to take care of some things. So,
President, and there's some changes to the resolution itself. Do you want me to?
Okay, so I'll start, and then you can pick up.
Okay.
How's that? Thank you. So whereas the Open Public Meetings Act authorizes boards of education to meet in executive session under certain circumstances, and whereas the Open Public Meetings Act requires the board to adopt a resolution at a public meeting to go into private session, now therefore be it resolved by the West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional School District Board of Education that it is necessary to meet in executive session to discuss certain items involving
Okay, the board will not be discussing item number 1, personnel, but the board will be discussing item number 4, negotiations with prescription providers, negotiations of assistant superintendent employment contracts. In addition to the items already noted on number 7, the board will be discussing docket C 35-16. And in box number 8, the board will be discussing matters of personnel, including the superintendent evaluation process.
So be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential will be made public as soon as feasible. The minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Be it further resolved that the board will not return to open session to conduct business at the conclusion of this executive session. So we're not going to be voting on anything after our executive session. So you don't need to hang out for us. Are there any other questions? All right, so I need a motion to adjourn.
No, motion is exec session.
Right. Motion to go into closed session. Oh. Motion to go into closed session, Tony and Rachel. We'll take about a 10-minute break or so, and then we'll meet in the conference room.